I went to one of the large hospitals in my city for persistent chest pain. It was my first time at this hospital. The staff was friendly and welcoming. I took a seat and waited my turn to see the doctor. While I was waiting, I watched the other patients and the busy staff around me. Finally, it was my turn. I entered the doctor's office. He was an elderly doctor, and his appearance suggested that he was an expert in his field. He gestured for me to sit down on the chair in front of him. I sat down and he asked me what was wrong. I told him that I had been feeling pain in my chest when I breathed and that I sometimes had difficulty breathing. The doctor nodded and said that he would run some tests and then reevaluate my condition. He sent me to another department to have blood and urine tests done. I went to the designated department and had a few vials of blood and urine taken. The nurse told me that I would be able to get the results from the doctor in a few hours. While waiting, I bought a coffee from the cafe in the hospital garden and sat down to relax. People were constantly rushing around. Ambulances and cars were entering and leaving the hospital. The hospital atmosphere always felt oppressive to me. A few hours had passed. I went back to see the doctor. He sat me down again with the same cold expression. I sat down and listened to him. He told me that according to the test results, there might be a mass in my lungs and that I needed an MRI to get a better picture. The MRI was located on the lowest floor of the hospital, so I went there. It was 2 floors below the ground floor. The attendant told me that the procedure would take a long time and that I had to lie perfectly still on the table. I put my metal belongings, wallet, watch, and cell phone in the locker the attendant showed me. I entered the room and lay down on my back on the table of the device. The table slowly moved into the machine. The machine started to work. The whirring and buzzing of the machine sounded scary to me in that cramped space. However, these rhythmic sounds lulled me to sleep and my eyes closed. Suddenly, I startled and opened my eyes. I thought the procedure was over and a different signal sound startled me. I think I slept for a while, but I didn't think it was very long. The procedure could not have lasted more than half an hour. The table of the machine slowly came out. I got up from where I was lying. The room felt a little strange to me. I was dazed from sleeping and thought that was why I felt that way. I left the MRI room and headed to the other room where the attendant was. The attendant who was there when I entered had left and been replaced by someone else. The attendant told me that the doctor would tell me the results. I went to the lockers. I had a hard time remembering for a moment. I couldn't remember which locker I put my things in. There were a few lockers. I looked at all of them, but my things weren't in any of them. I told the attendant that I couldn't find my belongings. The attendant told me that I hadn't put my belongings in the locker and that I had come straight to the machine and lay down. I was surprised, because I had put my things in the locker. I was sure of that. I didn't say anything else to the attendant. My intention was to go to the hospital security. I would go and tell them. Maybe they could look at the cameras to see what happened. I pushed the door to leave the MRI room and was shocked for a moment. When I came out into the corridor, I felt like I was in a completely different place. My heart was pounding with fear and my body started to shiver with chills. I quickly headed for the stairs and went up to the ground floor. I was in a very strange place. The hospital was completely different. It was like I had come to a different hospital. I was very confused. I ran outside and couldn't believe my eyes. It was like I was in a different city, in a different place. The street lamps, buildings, roads, cars, even people's clothes. Everything was very strange and had changed. Half an hour ago I was in a completely different world. Now I was in a completely different world. My phone and wallet came to mind. I went up to a man I saw in the hospital garden and asked to use his phone. The man looked at me strangely. Then he gave me his phone. I tried to call my own number, but it said the number was invalid. I felt like I was in a nightmare. I looked at the date on the phone in my hand, and at that moment, I nearly fainted from shock. It had been 30 years. How could this be? I couldn't understand. Everything was so different. I hadn't anticipated this at all. My home wasn't far away. I ran towards it, only to find completely different people living there. I didn't dare talk to them. I had no idea where my family was, and with my phone gone, I couldn't contact any friends. As darkness began to fall, I decided returning to the hospital was my best option. I walked slowly back, overwhelmed by the changes I witnessed. Reaching the hospital, I sat down somewhere to gather my thoughts and rest. How could this happen? How did I travel 30 years into the future? I fell asleep, woke up, and opened my eyes 30 years later. Something wasn't right. Could I have slept for that long in the MRI machine? Impossible. No one can sleep for that long. Then there's only one explanation. The MRI machine is a time machine. I need to get back in it. I have to find a way. With this thought, I began planning while seated. It was late, and I was starving. But I had no money, and even if I did, would it be valid at this time? I needed my ID to talk to the doctors, but that was out of the question. So, I had to find a way to sneak in. I went down to the lower floor where the machine was located. An attendant was present, and a patient was inside the machine. I waited. When the patient came out, I told the attendant that I had forgotten my phone and wallet there. The attendant allowed me to enter. I looked around, checking the lockers, all while the attendant watched me suspiciously. Finding nothing, I asked if I could also check the room with the machine. The attendant allowed me in as well. I scanned the machine but saw nothing unusual. With the attendant's eyes on me, I couldn't enter the machine. I left the room, still anxious. An idea struck me. If a doctor needed an MRI scan for any reason, I could get back inside. So I went back upstairs. Without an ID, I didn't know how to get to see a doctor. Taking a chance, I joined the queue. When it was my turn, anxiety surged through me. I told the doctor that I had a severe headache, rushed to the hospital, and forgot my ID. The doctor looked at me and asked if it was truly bad. I said yes, trying my best to act the part. I wasn't sure if it was convincing. The doctor silently handed me a piece of paper. It was a form asking for my information, name, personal details, and a few other things. I filled it out and handed it back to the doctor. I asked hesitantly if I would be getting an MRI scan. The doctor simply said, "I think you just read my mind." Relief washed over me. Back in the room with the machine, the attendant had changed, which was good because I wouldn't attract too much attention now. Without wasting time, I lay down on the machine's table. It started working, producing the same buzzing and whirring noises. As it hummed, I waited anxiously for something different to happen. Everything seemed normal. Remembering how I fell asleep the first time, I gently closed my eyes. I waited. As time passed, my stress intensified. Would I go back? How was this even possible? The same signal sound echoed once more. I opened my eyes and slowly emerged from the machine. Yes, I had returned. I was lying on the bed. I was so excited. There was a bad smell around. I was staring at the ceiling. I tried to get up slowly from the bed, but I felt a pain in my lower back. I thought it was just sore from lying down for a long time. However, it was a severe pain. Getting up was very difficult. I took a deep breath and stood up. My head was spinning. I put my hand on my back and felt something. It seemed like a bandage. I leaned over a bit and saw a large bandage on the right side of my back. "Hey, what's going on?" I shouted. I came out from where the MRI machine was. No one was there. I couldn't understand what had happened to me. I struggled to reach the cabinets. I took my phone and other belongings. I opened my phone's screen. It had been exactly 3 days. I couldn't comprehend what had happened. Everything was like a nightmare. It was midnight. I went out to the corridor and looked around. No one was there. I headed towards the stairs. I couldn't go up. It seemed impossible to go up. I reluctantly took the elevator. There were buttons only for 2 floors in the elevator. One should have been the floor I was on. The light was on above that button. I pressed the other button in pain. The elevator door closed and started going up. It moved for a while and stopped. The door opened. When I got out of the elevator, I was at the entrance of the hospital. Everything was the same, just like before. Nothing was different. I stepped out of the elevator and the door closed. I was in pain. I asked for help from a staff member. The staff asked what had happened. I showed him my back and told him I was in pain. The staff told me to go home and rest. When I pointed to the elevator to show him something happened to me downstairs, he said that it was the door to the cleaning room. When I turned to look, it really was just a simple door, not at all like the elevator door. The staff reminded me that I was tired and needed to rest. When I mentioned the doctor was waiting for me, he took my ID to review my file. He looked at my file and said I stayed in our hospital for 2 days. There is a slight cold in your lungs, and the bandages on your back and lower back are there because of the cream applied. Shocked and in pain, I left the hospital and went home by taxi. I learned the truth a few days later when I opened the bandage on my back. There was a big cut on the right side of my lower back. I immediately called 911. The police who came listened to what happened. After a few days of investigation, the commissioner told me that there was nothing different or wrong at the hospital I went to. As time passed, I couldn't understand what I had experienced, and my hopelessness increased. Now, I was just waiting to heal. During those times, the only thing on my mind was what I had been through. After a few weeks, I went back to the same hospital several times. My goal was to find out what happened. I couldn't reach that elevator. Despite going up and down several times, I could never reach the place where the machine was. It was time to give up and continue with my normal life. I had lost my hope, but one day, I received a phone call. The caller offered to meet with me. The person said they couldn't explain what happened on the phone and just mentioned that they were calling about the hospital. I immediately met with that person. This person had invited me to a cafe. He greeted me at the door, and when we entered, about 20 people were looking at us. Everyone welcomed me to their group. I greeted them, and it was time to learn the truth. These people were also those who had experienced what I had been through. On that day, when the doctor checked my blood values, he realized I was a suitable donor. Later, they put me to sleep in the MRI machine, performed surgery, and took my kidney. This hospital had applied many such operations to many people. Those in the cafe were the ones who survived these surgeries. The elevator was designed as a hidden passage to go to the unknown floor of the hospital. It was designed in a way that could never be found. Their goal was to trade organs when a suitable donor was found. The events I experienced were either a dream or a hallucination. Upon entering the machine, under the influence of the anesthesia they gave me, I felt as if I had traveled to the future, almost 30 years ahead. We are the victims, they are the killers. We are innocent, they are guilty. Now, this handful of people who know the truth will reveal it.